These are slow feeders, and this is a volume doser. I got both of these tools recently and each has had a bit of a learning curve, but they've changed my espresso for the better in their own ways. So let's start with slow feeding coffee, which doesn't even require a tool like the Fuse Divisions or Crema Loop ones I have here. I like the convenience of using a tool, but you can do it for free. Just take a dose of coffee in your hand and feed it into your grinder bean by bean. And the difference this makes to your grinds is huge. The first thing you'll notice is you have to grind significantly finer to get the same kinds of shot timings. So why does this happen? The key is how the weight behind the beans already being ground changes the grinds. It's pretty abstract, but think of it like a road where traffic has been narrowed from 3 lanes to just 1. This is a lot like how grinder burrs get narrower and narrower as the grinds exit out of the side. Now, if you have just 4 or 5 cars driving down the road, they don't even really need to slow down. They all comfortably merge into the single lane between other cars already driving. But if you've got something like 100 cars, some will need to slow down and other cars will need to stop to allow other drivers to merge into the lane. This is where the metaphor breaks down a bit, because if it were like coffee going through a grinder, they'd be being crushed into tiny little bits while waiting for the car to let them into the right lane. But hopefully you get my point. Dumping even just one 18-gram dose into your grinder all in one go is going to lead to compacting an additional mechanical load behind the beans as they wait their turn to get out of the small gap in the side of the burrs. When you slow feed, each bean is being ground almost all on its own. Now, grinder burrs have blades, but they don't so much cut as they do crush. So that additional force on each bean causes more brittle failures because the beans aren't being cushioned from the full force of the grinder burrs by other beans. So let me show you how different the grind distribution is. It's like slow feeding has increased the number of fines, but also made the distribution much more concentrated on a particular grind size. According to this, around 530 microns. I'm not sure if this number is correct. It seems a little bit high to me, but the comparison is really helpful for what we're looking at here, as I don't have £40,000 for a high-end particle analyzer to get the specific grind sizes. Because of this major distribution change, this will change how water goes through the puck, lowering the chance of channeling due to a more even distribution of particle sizes and therefore having much more clarity of flavor. But of course, a distribution chart can't tell you how something tastes, and I don't like to engage in scientism or sophistry, so I made 2 espressos with this Panama Geisha side by side, one with the slow feeder and one without. Don't worry, I dialed it in before doing this test, so I can just check here in the Brew Ledger what settings I used and get back to them easily. It's an amazing coffee, and this is just with the standard one. This is without slow feeding it, and it tastes like pineapple, and it's very rich, like honey rich. It's such a good coffee. Wow, the pineapple flavor is just so much more prominent in this version than the previous one. It's insane. A completely different kind of coffee. In other videos, I've intimated that too many fine grinds is bad, but slow feeding increases the total amount of fines. So why does this make the coffee taste so much more exciting to me? This is where we're going to get into a bit of uncharted territory, and my hypothesis is that most of the time extra fines comes from regrinding due to compacted beans getting stuck in the burr, or from old grinder blades that don't crush and cut the beans as effectively. But slow feeding reduces the unevenness of the extraction, so the fines produced by it are actually increasing the extraction yield and adding body and richness without the courses and boulders that would have ordinarily given you that unpleasant mix of over and under extracted coffee. If you want to increase this effect and have the capability on your grinder, you can even use a lower RPM to get a really narrow distribution and more clarity of flavor. Obviously, this is a delicious and expensive geisha coffee, so both of these shots taste amazing in their own ways, but it's not just for expensive, fancy beans. I did the same test with Caravan's house roast that I got last week, and it also improved the flavors really, really nicely. Espresso purists will love this because it lets you really notice more specific tastes in every shot, but it also makes a big difference for milky drinks too. God damn, that's too good. Holy crap. Because the flavor is more punchy, more accentuated, it makes milky drinks actually taste more like coffee and less like a mug of hot milk with a little coffee flavoring. With some beans, especially delicate light roasts, it can be hard for the espresso to cut through the richness of the milk, but slow feeding makes it much clearer. There are of course some drawbacks. Obviously one is that it takes a lot longer. With the Fuse Divisions one, it took just over 50 seconds, and with the Crema Loop one on nearly full speed, it was around 35 seconds. A normal shot is under 10 seconds on the same grinder, so So obviously, if you're doing shots back to back, this is going to slow things down from espresso to a slow-o. The fused one I have is a prototype, but the next version will have variable speed plus LEDs to make it clearer when it's on. But even so, it will still obviously be slower than dumping the whole shot into the grinder. You'll also need a decent grinder to get dialed in because you're going to grind a lot finer. On the MHW3 Bomber F74 Navigator, I even got to the 0 point with one lightly roasted coffee, when without slow feeding I was grinding at 7. And although the shot came out really nicely, I kind of felt like I wanted just a tiny bit finer to get the most flavor out of this beautiful Rwandan coffee from Blue Hour. But the results overall have been pretty fantastic. Give it a try just by feeding with your hands slowly at home and let me know what you think. I've got links to the slow feeders in the description, as well as to the Brew Ledger that I use to track my shots, so I can easily switch grinder settings between slow feeding and not slow feeding. The next tool I got was this volume doser. This one takes a bit of figuring out, but once I got it, I realized the potential. So raise your hand if you use 18 grams for all your espressos. Now I used to do that too. I thought 18 grams was ideal for an 18-gram basket. It sounds natural, right? But what you might notice sometimes though is that some coffees are much taller in your basket with 18 grams than others, and this is because of the density of the coffee beans. As I've talked about in previous videos, 18 grams of a high density coffee will take up a lot less space than a low density coffee. This makes a big difference when it comes to extracting espresso, and with some coffees it might really ruin your shots if you're not adjusting the dose. The amount of headspace between your espresso puck and the shower screen is absolutely critical. If your puck is too shallow and there's too much space above it, water pools before hitting the coffee. This causes turbulence that stirs up fines and opens up pathways for water to flow more quickly through the puck. So then instead of flowing evenly, water channels, leading to poor extraction. If you overfill your portafilter, the puck sits too close to the shower screen. When water hits, the coffee puck absorbs the water and swells, pressing against the shower screen, which squashes and distorts it. This creates cracks and more channels for water to rush through, leading to uneven flow and again, lower overall extraction. So what's the ideal amount of headspace? Really, we're looking for around 2 to 3 millimeters, as this allows space for the puck to expand when it's saturated by water, but not so much that it cuts off water flow. This is where the volume doser comes in. It's a lot like the Breville Razor, which was a good idea, just really poorly marketed and not explained. Plus this one can be used for any 58mm espresso machine, and I'm pretty sure Fused is working on other versions for smaller baskets as well. The first time you use it, you'll need to set it up for your shower screen height. If you switch shower screens or machines, you'll need to do this part again. So I had to do that a few weeks ago when I got the Pasado shower screen here, but once it's set up, you can forget about this part. Now all you need to do when you get a new coffee is to overdose a little bit and tamp down hard. Then go in with the doser that already knows the height of my shower screen and shave off the top layers of coffee grinds. I usually remember to weigh my empty portafilter before, so once I've shaved off the excess, I just put this back on here and I get a total weight number. This is the ideal dose for this coffee that will leave just 2 millimeters or so of headspace above it, the perfect amount. This changes how you dose coffee, as there's an ideal amount based on water flow and physics. If you can get this right every time, instead of guessing how much coffee you need for your dose, you'll just end up with better coffee with just one tool and only around 2 grams of coffee waste for every new coffee bean, though probably you'll save coffee as you'll get dialed in faster without having to think about dose as a variable. Is dosing by volume better? I can't be sure yet. I'll continue testing, but I've been using this for a month or so now, and I'd say it's a much easier way to work with correct doses no matter what machine, grinder, and coffee bean I'm using. You can easily remember what the dose should be with each coffee bean by taking a note in the Brew Ledger on a new page for each coffee you use. What do you think? Is volume dosing going to be the new normal? Should we all be slow feeding our beans for some extra extraction? Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks so much for watching, you wonderfully overcaffeinated people, and I'll see you on the next one.